Hello and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Verint, Auscontact's national platinum sponsor, and it's entitled, rather controversially, Is First Contact Resolution Dead? Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation, as well as provide some ideas to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll be having a Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'm Fiona Keough, CEO of Auscontact, and your moderator for today. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, let's use the time to quickly run through some housekeeping with you. Remember to interact with us to maximise the benefit, and as you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing you with a recording of the webinar. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions or make comments for today's speakers from time to time, and remember, we are going to have a full Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Don't forget to ask your questions as we go along. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your internet connection, please note that on the control panel, you can click the raise hand button and the Auscontact team will rush to your aid, or you can revert to the confirmation email which you used for the link to the webinar, and all the relevant phone numbers and access codes are there available for you to use. I know that many of you are familiar with asking questions, but let's try out the Q&A button on the control panel now, just in case. And the question for today is, and I know Jacob and Lisa are actually going to know the answer to this question. When is Melbourne scheduled to finish stage 4 lockdown? Now, many of you will have seen on the news this morning and last night about leaks in the press about what's going to happen. Okay, so we've got some jolly jokers on this webinar, which is really good because that means they're going to ask some wonderful questions. We have someone saying that your lockdown finishes in 2022. I don't think so. And that's from a Melbourneite, because I happen to know this person is actually located. Oh, I got another one with the same date. All right, so most people are saying, oh, God bless Belinda. She said, when Uncle Dan says so. Which is probably the most correct answer, but at the moment it's scheduled to finish on the 13th of September. Now that's fantastic. Of course, everybody knows how to use the questions, the Q&A button on the control panel, so I'm really hoping we're going to get some super questions. So it's going to give me great pleasure to introduce today's speakers. And the host for today is Jacob Murray-White, Director Engagement Management at Verint, Lisa Kauppinen, Head of Client First Melbourne at IOOF, and last but not least, Daniel Cooper, Channel Digital Lead Consumer Channels at Spark New Zealand. Over to you, Jacob.
Well, thank you, Fiona. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today. I've stopped looking at the number of participants we have online because it's a little bit scary. I think we just cracked the 140 mark, which is rather awing in a way. Firstly, as a participant in this industry for the last 30 years, I want to say to all of you, well done. As a group, we have collectively, and you in particular, have done remarkable things over the last 6 months. And people rarely say well done and congratulate us on the effort we've done, but the things you guys have all done during this crisis event, new normal, insert the terminology of your choice, you should all, I'm so proud of us as an industry. So thank you, well done. What have we done? Why am I thanking you? We've delivered the future. You've had futurists, thought leaders talking about where we are going as an industry for a very long time. And in a lot of ways, this event has, delivered us to the future, has forced us to rip off the Band-Aid. And we've actually, we've moved through the looking glass. What have we got? We've got customers successfully self-serving at numbers we've never seen before and we couldn't dream of before. We have delivered agents at home. I spent 5 years of my career trying to deliver at-home contact center agents in Australia and New Zealand, and it was a battle. But now you've all done it, and you did it under fire and quickly. We are hearing about contact center repatriation at a level which I think all of us would have thought was impossible a year ago. We are regularly in the press hearing about another large Australian organisation talking about bringing their contact center back on shore. I think it's another remarkable change to our industry. We're hearing about, we're all hearing about and experiencing and having business discussions about how we can leverage artificial intelligence in our day-to-day business lives. And finally, we're embracing cloud contact centers. Even a year ago, people were still very iffy about, the role of the cloud contact center and embracing the cloud for their critical business systems. But, again, we have been forced to embrace it. And as a result, most of us now have, significant investments in that space. So we've gone through this challenge, and we've, we've been forced into the future. And our real challenge now is to take advantage of it. It's a trite-old statement, but a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So it's incumbent on us as an industry and as a group of people, I would argue, that we need to embrace the opportunities we now have to drive our industry forward and, change the way we operate and to change the way we service our customers and our staff. So I've got a question for you all. The real question is, so we got through, we got ourselves working in the new world, or the dreaded new normal. The question is what did we start doing the second we got ourselves back under control? Have you been focusing on handle time after call work? Have you been focusing on monitoring your agent performance? Has your focus been first contact resolution? Have you been worrying about your employee experience? The real question is, have you gone back to what you traditionally did? Have you been taking the opportunity to take advantage of these changes, or have you been carrying the old mindset? So I've actually got a poll question for you all. And I want, if possible, these answers are anonymous. So what honestly has been your number one daily focus in stabilizing your operations? Have you been thinking about, getting your efficiency back under control and driving that efficiency further? Or have you been focusing on driving your customer experience? And this is a binary choice. If you've been 55-45 one way, I want you to select your 55. So you get one choice in this. So I'm fascinated to see how we go.
And I wondered, Jacob, based on customers from Australia and New Zealand that you work with, what are you seeing? Without giving the answer away.
I've seen a lot of both. I've seen many customers wanting to think about the big transformational and experience things, but in their heart of hearts, they've been thinking about the efficiency of their operations. Because we have, I think a lot of people, this loss of control, which we've been run into through this process, has meant that a lot of organisations have, it's a loss of control, and then as a result, we're losing what we're used to, and a lot of companies have, therefore been focusing on these efficiencies.
Cool. Well, why don't we get Jess to share the poll results or the pop quiz results, and let's see what our audience is focusing on. Well, look at that, Jacob.
I am I'm somewhat surprised and very happy. I think it's extremely interesting to see that, it's great. that we're seeing a slight preference to people who are actually focusing on improving their customer experience since in that time. And we've got a really diverse group. So that's a fascinating little insight into what people are looking at. So let's see how this aligns with the broader market and broader market research. I've got two sets of data here, one from Gartner and one from the excellent recent Fifth Quadrant report. Gartner is showing that their understanding of what service leaders are focusing on at the moment has been, the primary focus has been looking at digital channels and embracing digital transformation and the channels associated with them. And then the second priority that Gartner is seeing is people focusing on making life easier for their customer service reps. Which I think is interesting, and there's some of the comments going on inside the Zoom chat would also, I think, align with that to a certain degree. The Fifth Quadrant survey is fascinating because it shows that personalization of experience and digital transformation are essentially the most popular foci for organisations, but that the leaders are also focusing deeply on reducing customer effort, improving the employee experience, and creating seamless omni-channel experiences. So my poll question was a little bit naughty because I was interested in seeing what people were their number one priority, and I suspect some of the feedback we received about neither was associated with people who are really looking at other opportunities. So it's quite clear to me though that we are all looking at these issues. We're all looking about how can we manage this new environment, this move to digital, supporting the digital transformation and supporting our customers better with these new technologies as a critical focus for us all. I also have this, I think it's also important to think about how is what we are doing aligning with our corporate objectives. The vast majority of us on this call work for an organisation which has publicly stated corporate objectives, the corporate strategy. And I've always personally found it very important to make sure that I'm aligning everything I do on a day-to-day basis with what my corporate strategy is. I've always got it printed in front of me, believe it or not, and I refer to it every time I have a tricky decision to make. I would find it, but there's a fair degree of consistency about what our organisations are trying to do, and it's a combination of increasing market share, deepening and widening our customer relationships. Most organisations have digital transformation as a critical objective. Most organisations are working towards self-serving, increasing self-serving. There's a regular desire to embrace AI. There's always, of course, managing costs, and most organisations will say something, and are talking about improving their employee experience. So at this stage, I want to ask our guests, Daniel, Lisa. Lisa, ladies first, I suppose. So what are IOOF's corporate objectives?
Yeah, look, thanks, Jacob. For us, our corporate objectives will always link into our purpose. Our purpose is understand me, look after me, and secure my future. That's not only resonates for our clients and our customers, but we can also link that to our people and our employees. And certainly the last 6+ months, and to your poll before, I mean, we don't have traditional measures. We do operate quite differently, and our focus and measure is delivering what matters to our clients. But we needed to look after our people, get them up and running at home in order to do that. So look, of course, increased market share, probably fair to say in light of a recent acquisition. I can't leave that out, of course, but certainly delivering what matters to our clients and living to our purpose. And absolutely digital. We've got a significant IT piece of work at the moment. So, I mean, there's a lot that does resonate for us there for sure.
And Daniel.
Yeah, Jacob, very much aligned with Lisa, as well as what you have stated here based on your research. our purpose is to help all of New Zealand win big in a digital world. And, being one of New Zealand's largest corporates, as well as in a technology and digital space, it is our responsibility to push the envelope and to push the boundaries of digitization and to take the country along that journey. Our colleagues around the business industry look to us to take the lead in certain areas, or at least to co-lead certain initiatives out. And of course, market share is front and center, and deepening and widening our customer relationships. And we achieve our cost outcomes through that simplification, digitization, automation, and how that shows up in the care space, or in the customer experience space for us, is it's all about, I'd love to give our people time back in their day to speak to their customers instead of their computers. That's our big charge, and that comes to and speaks to employee experience, right? We build fantastic customer journeys for our consumers to consume online, but we don't do the same for our employees. And how might we focus on that so that we can tick the above boxes?
Thank you, Daniel. I must call out to myself, I didn't actually have employee experience on this slide until our discussion yesterday with Daniel and Lisa, and they both insisted that I actually raise the priority of that in this slide. So thank you both. Though it does go without saying, and I think both Lisa and Daniel mentioned it, that digital transformation is a universal goal. I can't find any large organisation or a mid-sized organisation who isn't embracing this as a strategic objective, and it has a fundamental, as the customer's experience industry, it has a fundamental impact on us. So I want to ask another quiz question. I'd like you all to think about the last time you interacted with a large enterprise personally about something non-trivial. Now I'm going to let you define what non-trivial is. Something which was a little bit harder than easy. What was the approach you took, and how did you go? So did you successfully self-serve using the digital channels? Did you attempt and fail? Did you start with a chat process or some form of text? Or did you just pick up the phone?
So Jacob, maybe you can share a personal experience.
I always tried. I'm a contact center customer experience geek. I love it. I've been doing this for way too long. So I always try to self-serve, and I regularly fail, and I get myself worked up to a state of ideological fury at many times when I do my darndest to self-serve, and when I fail, I'll go via the text, and then I will end up with a phone call, at which stage things can get quite interesting, I must admit. So it's I always try to self-serve, and
Okay, so you're a channel surfer.
No, I start with self-serve, and when I fail, I'll desperately try to use the channels available, because I believe in the digital transformation and getting it working, because I know that there's somebody who's very similar to me in an organisation who's responsible for developing this digital transformation strategy, and I want to help them.
Perfect. All right, well, we'll get Jess to close the poll, and let's see where we've landed. Oh, it's a very tight race.
Well, that's really, really
Interesting.
It's fascinating, and I would like to thank you all for your honesty. It's brilliant. I think one of the two most interesting stats, well, they're all interesting, but clearly the fact that 16% of people manage to self-serve is really good. It means we're getting there. And we know we're getting there because it's becoming easier and easier to do so. The 28% self-serve and fail, but I think the other really interesting part is we have 56% of people jumping straight into a human interaction. And I've got a slide coming up in a moment, which is actually going to reinforce that. But it's good that we're all trying to use the text-based interaction form. But the fact that 24% of us are picking up the phone and dialing straight away is about what I would expect us to be, expect it to be. So thank you. Very, very interesting. So moving on. But I think the critical point I would like to make is digital first is a reality. A large number of us are trying to go digital first. And then, I mean, interesting question, is text and email is text and email a digital first approach? We could argue both ways. I think most of us would think that the phone call is non-digital. Daniel, Lisa, this is an unscheduled question. What do you think? Is an email or a text digital?
I'd say so, yeah. Yeah, to me, it would classify as a digital interaction.
Same, and Lisa? Yeah, good. So would I, actually. So digital first is a reality. But I think what we all know in our hearts is we're a long way from digital only. And I think this is part of the challenge we all have as an industry is if the focus is so great on the digital transformation that we have to make sure that we're worrying about what happens with the calls which with the contacts which fall out, or the interactions which fall out of that digital path. This is a fascinating piece of this is a piece of research which has come out of the Verint's American research team, and it's focused on the banking sector. It's the Verint Experience Index, and it shows the split for banking customers with regards to opening a new account. And it really, I think, quite closely aligns with the data we just produced. People are, when they're researching, are very happy to try online first, as a general rule. People are happy to use the panoply of digital channels that are available to them. But as soon as they start requiring physical help, they will switch to more traditional human-based interactions. Now, this survey was carried out in April. So this is a post-COVID piece of research, and there's still that huge branch. There's still a huge branch element to that support activity. But I think the important part is that we're getting really good at digitizing the easy stuff. For the last 30 years, we've automated more and more and more of the easy transactions. I spent a fair few years working on self-service IVR functionality. So what we've been very good at is removing the easy transactional material. In our traditional models, and there's still many of us have organizations today where we've got a large contact center service which does that first level triage, who's based on either solving the easy stuff or then passing over to specialists. So we used to have a model which was all about handle the easy stuff with one big group and then hand over to the specialist to solve the complex stuff. We have automated most of that transactional gear. So we're now left with the things which, I don't want to call it failure demand, but the things which can't be handled simply is now the bread and butter of what we are handling. And the way we handle that failure, those complicated issues which couldn't be successfully self-served, is what will now actually determine our relationships with our customers.
Can I just add to that?
Lisa?
Yeah, can I just add to that? Sorry. So in our world, we use the word failure demand. And so, yes, we've been able to automate a large portion of our more transactional work, if you like. And in fact, a withdrawal that would take sort of up to 2 or 3 weeks previously, we can actually now do same day for a client, which is exciting, particularly in the super industry for anyone who's on. But the work, and you talk about the complex work that still needs to, was more challenging to perhaps automate. But for us, we also want to receive the value demand. So that's the work that it's not caused by failure. It's initiated by the client where they just want to engage with us in whatever mode they want to engage with us. It's up to them on the channel. But from receiving that value demand is where, heaven forbid I say the word value again, is where we see, removing as much of that failure as possible, and just ideally just more value coming through.
Thanks, Lisa. I think value demand is a great concept and very useful, and hopefully something which might be resonating with a large number of people on this conference call. I think the other thing we need to think about is what's important to our customers. This is a couple of year old PwC survey, but I still think it's great, because I think the tendency we have is to forget what is important to our customers, and it's quite clear, other than being easy payment, their focuses are efficient interactions, convenient interactions, friendly interactions, and knowledgeable interactions. It's all about making it easy and pleasant, and that is what they are looking from us. That is the most important element, and I think we all know that intuitively, but it's important to carry it over. I want to remind everybody also of a important case study. I expect a large number of you have read this case study, but it's important to refresh everyone's mind. I strongly suggest that you go dig up the T-Mobile case study on the Harvard Business Review and have a read, because they've embraced an entire new operating model, which is based around aligning their customer service and their customer experience groups around a team of experts who are responsible for groups of customers. And they're not responsible for traditional metrics. They're responsible for basically the performance of those customer groups, their profitability, their P&L. And as a part of that, they've changed their operating structure, and they've removed those traditional contact center stats, which we've all spent so long worrying about. And by doing that, by focusing on the big picture outcomes, and I've summarized this terrible. If there was somebody from T-Mobile on the phone, they'd kill me for simplifying it so much. But by moving to a model which is all about embracing servicing the customer properly, and worrying about the big picture outcomes, they have seen a significant decrease in call transfers. They've dropped significantly the escalations. Their churn has improved. This is important to a large number of us on this call. The NPS has significantly improved. They are now moved up into the rarefied atmosphere. 67% Net Promoter Score is a remarkable number. And the other cracker that I think is that they've driven down their agent attrition. And we all know the operational impact of that and what that speaks from an employee experience perspective. So if you're considering models and operational approaches to this new paradigm, I strongly suggest you pull out that case study and read it. Focusing on the stats, and one of the reasons hopefully many of you are on this call today is, do we need to broaden our view? We have traditionally focused on a very simple set of efficiency data: handle time, first call res, straight sales performance, attrition.
Jacob, you know how I feel about some of those traditional models. I think I threatened you at one point, did I not?
I once
speak to my people.
Lisa once threatened to actually kill me if I mentioned after call work to her staff. And I believed her. And I didn't do it. I didn't talk about after call work or average handle time, which was quite fun. As we've developed over the last 20 years, we have grown our statistical view and the metrics we use. And all of us are using these stats. We've all, many of us will have these statistics as a part of our personal KPIs. And as we've evolved, we've added in things such as NPS, we've added in cost per calls and conversion rates and banded calls, but we're still really focusing on a reasonably large number of efficiency stats. What I think is important, what I'd like to propose, is that we need to think like the greater organization. The CEO doesn't wake up in the morning well, I doubt our CEOs wake up in the morning and she isn't going, I wonder what the after call work was in the contact center today. That is not what's being discussed at the C level. So the CEO and her direct reports are not focusing on that. They're focusing on the corporate objectives. So I think it's really important to for us to start thinking about how we're feeding into those broader corporate objectives, whether it be digital resolution rates or touches per case, or, you know, as Lisa was just mentioning then, the ability to, how long is it taking them, their, rolled throughput yield, the amount of time it's taking them to service customer functions. So Daniel, Lisa, go.
If I may have a crack at this, it's something that we're notorious for in contact centers as a whole, right? Because it can be measured, it shall be. 3 years ago when we started our transformation journey and I sort of stepped in, we asked for what the stats were and the KPIs for the agents in one of the contact centers that I was looking after. And as you do, you get sent a spreadsheet, 14 columns. Column A was name and then just a whole bunch of data on a spreadsheet. And you ask the question, so how do I know as an agent if I'm successful or not? And you have a conversation with your team leader and your team leader tells you whether you're good or not so much. And that's just terribly disempowering, because that's lazy leadership, because just because it can be measured doesn't mean it has to go all the way through the organization. And now we talk about very much about levels of ownership or levels of influence. So AHT is still a relevant metric in my opinion. It's just not relevant to the frontliner. It's relevant to me. What can I do to make their life easier through digital solutions, through automation, efficient knowledge, etc., so that their AHT can be influenced in a positive way, or they can reinvest that in having a relationship building sales conversation. So it's about levels of ownership. So we now sort of focus on about 3 to 4 KPIs, depending on your level of ownership within the organization. And that does encompass a lot of what you see here, but not all of them.
Daniel, could you just, also, can you give everyone a bit of an insight into some of those statistics that you're now looking at organizationally and operationally? Thanks.
Sure. So we look at efficiency and effectiveness, right? Like as an overall contact center level. In the efficiency stages, we look at average speed of answer. Are we treating our customers with respect by answering them in the right or in a timely manner? At a contact center level, we look at our average handle time. Are we being as efficient? And we look at our repeats. From an effectiveness perspective, we look at our interaction NPS and what our customers are saying about us. And we've done away with first contact resolution because it doesn't work for us, and we've replaced it with ownership. We are, as you have touched on earlier, we've been through our journey of simplifying, digitizing, etc. Is there more room? Absolutely. But over the last 3 years, we've reduced by over 50% human-based interaction. So what we are now left with predominantly is relationship building conversations, our complex conversations, mostly because we've introduced our own levels of complexity through systems, tools, and processes. But what we're left with is not the low-hanging done in one. They're not transactional interactions anymore. So therefore, what we needed was something more meaningful than what FCR offered. So we've done away with that, and we've gone, Spark's promise to our customers and our desired experiences, you may need to contact us once because you have a join, change, or resolve related inquiry. But from there on, our person's going to need to liaise with the local fiber company or send you a modem or whatever we need to do to get you up and running again or to resolve your inquiry. But your one interaction with us will result in multiple updates from us, and we will own the interaction from there on through to resolution. So we ask our customer now, did Spark take ownership of your inquiry? And we've conducted a trial through from about mid-January this year, and we have, as of July, flicked off first contact resolution and flicked over to our ownership question.
Thank you. As you know, I find that extraordinarily exciting at a personal and ideological level. Lisa.
I'll let you know in a few months if we're right or not.
I'm sure you will. Lisa, so what sort of stats are you guys focusing on?
So at a frontline level, so we do operate a bit differently. We don't have sort of the contact centre and sort of back-end administration. We've merged that all as one. So our people are case managers when that piece of work comes in, whether it's a call or email or whatever else that may be. We've got them down to one KPI for a frontline because, as Daniel was saying, I mean, you know, AHT, look, I don't like them as a measure, but yes, they're important that we are aware at a leadership level what they are. So absolutely, I agree with that. I haven't completely thrown it out the door, Jacob, just so you know. You know, but for us, we've got that down to one KPI about the overall lifting of their capability, because there is a lot for them to learn, and about then the leaders coaching them in order to continue to lift that capability. And at a broader level, our measures that we look at are, have we delivered what matters to our client? Now, that for those who are interested, we've built our own CRM, and I have my own development IT team that sit within my group who continue to improve and build that system. So we've got ways to capture that directly from a client perspective, not from a what the frontline person thinks that they achieved. We also measure our overall T position. So we want to get to today's work today. So when the work comes in, we're able to kick it off. Now, doesn't mean we can always complete it. I mean, you know, it might be an insurance claim or whatever. These things do take time. And again, to Daniel's point, there'd be numerous interactions. But how quick, you know, make sure we pick up that work, we contact that client and let them know that we are onto it, whether it's a client or our advisor. And we do measure, and I think I called out before about failure demand, and we measure our failure demand, whether it's a failure demand from driven by the organisation. And a failure demand for us would be if we send out a letter to a client and they call us because they don't understand it, which I'm sure many call centres have experienced in the past. So that's a failure demand, and that's not on my people, that's on the organisation, and we need that data so we can then provide feedback to try and to continually improve that. Or we measure our consequential failure is if our client first team, our operations team, has not done something right. So that's our broader measures. We've just started with our MPS, as you well know, and we're seeing some really strong results for end customer and our advisors. I mean, all the metrics on this page we look at, but they don't always drive every decision that we make. It helps formulate a story at a leadership level, not at a C level, and not at a certainly not at a frontline level.
I think that's a really interesting way of finishing that, because it is, yeah, all these stats have got value, but some of them are more important than others, and they're not certainly, some of them are interesting, but don't drive what we're trying to achieve operationally. Yeah. So let's kick to the big question. So is first contact resolution dead? I think Daniel's jumped ahead and given us an answer here. Listen, I think we've already answered this question, but I think we all know that, you know, the question I'm going to ask you directly, Daniel, is it an appropriate goal, primary goal for the interactions we now handle?
Depending on what your interactions are. If you are running a transactional-based contact center service, like I used to run a directory assistance service in a previous life where a done in one is appropriate. However, that's where first contact resolution has its place. However, in our environment where there is complexity, there is case management, like Lisa mentioned, in theory at least, FCR should be the direct inverse of your repeats. And in my experience across multiple industries and contact centers, it has never been the case. So therefore, to me, for an environment with complexity, with relationship building and ownership, FCR is not the measure that we go after.
Lisa?
Ditto.
Ditto. Love it. Thank you. I certainly feel that it's not the stat it used to be. And as an old directory assistance contact center agent with a 12-second AHT, it's fun to remember it. Now, moving on. Sorry, I've clicked my buttons too much. So we've determined that we probably need to reconsider our stats. And I think you've all heard, hopefully, some new stats from Daniel and Lisa, which are being used operationally today by your peers / competitors. So what does that mean for our operations and agents? Because things have changed, as I mentioned at the beginning. All of you in Australia will have probably seen this ING ad. As somebody, as I said earlier, cares very deeply about home-based contact centres. Having a large Australian organisation talking about their contact centre staff at home is remarkable about the things which have changed in our industry. We've discussed how we now have an environment where customers have almost certainly tried to self-serve. Now, the real question we've got here is, are you leveraging this information? Are you informing your agent about the customer's journey when they contact us, either via text or phone call? This is another term around this is, are you honoring that experience debt? Another term which is getting a fair bit of use at the moment. And finally, we're also working in an environment where, this is not more useful information from Gartner, they're good at this, is many of us are now talking about employee experience. As somebody who's been working, who worked with Kevin Panozza for many years, the great model was always, if somebody's happy at work, they're going to deliver better outcomes. You can hear the smile and it makes you more likely to be satisfied with the outcome. And we're actually seeing straight data now where we're seeing improved productivity and outcomes associated and customer satisfaction when you're focusing the agent experience as well. So what we've actually ended up with now is the empowered agent has finally arrived. All these changes are actually changing what it means to be a contact center agent today. We now have we don't have a new agent, but we are targeting, we have now got the old agent who was always seen as the superstar. We now need all of our agents to be that superstar. They need to be, and who are they? They're experienced. They're good at problem solving. Sorry, I'm reading a list, but it's important too. They're empathetic. We trust them to represent the business in an efficient, compliant manner. They're a participant in the business, and I think both Daniel and Lisa would be happy to talk about that. But we actually see them as our representatives with our customers. And they're channel agnostic, and I've thrown a little controversial one in there. They're going to be better and better paid as what they do becomes harder and harder and less transactional and more relationship based. So that is who our agents will become if they're not there already. And I suppose our goal is to give everyone the ability to become that empowered agent. So the question really is what tools do we need to provide the empowered agent? Now, in my view, there's 3 critical groups of tools which need to be provided. You need to give them a true single view of the customer. There's so many different ways of defining this, but a view of the customer, an accurate whole of customer view. We've got to give them tools which allow them to service that customer in real time. And we have to give them systems and solutions which make their jobs easier. Allow them to focus on looking after customers, not all the other stuff. So to break this out a bit further, what is a single customer view? A single customer view is a solution which allows you to see who this customer is and all the associated details. Allow the agent to see all the products that customer has and where they are on their billing cycles. You need to be able to pull data from third-party systems. You need to show where they are. You need to show those interactions about this journey and previous journeys. You can't say, if somebody's been trying to self-serve, I think it's a crime not to let the agent know about what that effort the customer has put in already. And we need to, in a perfect world, provide offers and alerts around that customer based on our profile. And we think this customer should be offered this, or please don't offer that because of the following reasons. We also need to provide a real-time agent toolkit. We need to help the agent handle that handle the issue and solve the problem. And what we're seeing in this industry is, at the moment, the critical functions we are needing to provide are things which will allow the agent to get it right for the customer. We need to give them contextual knowledge. We need to allow them to bring up the most accurate knowledge quickly for that agent so they can speak the truth, preferably the same truth which has been displayed to the customer on the website or in the app. We need to allow them to manage the case well. So case management, callbacks, workflow, it's all about, as Daniel said before, we make promises to agents. Agents make promises to customers. I'll sort this out for you and I will get you back. I will get back to you in 4 hours, 8 hours, 3 days. It is so important that we keep those promises to our customers, because that's how they measure us. They don't mind if we say we're going to call you back in 8 hours, but you better do that. So you need the ability to make those promises and keep them. There's great growth in internal IVAs, where an IVA/chatbot is used to provide a single, tools which can automatically help the agent find out information and carry off actions. RPAs are also being used in that space. We're also needing to provide real-time AI to analyze what's going on and provide suggestions. Some people call this the virtual wingman, or the intelligent wingman. And we need to give them a view of all of the channels which we're interacting with this customer with. So I'll send you an SMS, I'll send you something through into your app. And then finally, we need systems which make it easy for the agent to just do their job. Make it easy to do your workforce, make it easy to schedule yourself, make it easy for them to access their performance management, make it easy to be coached, to attend coaching sessions, consume coaching information. Make it easy to access, how am I being measured from a quality perspective? These tools are more traditional, but it is really important to make it, from my perspective, make it really easy for an agent to do their job and focus on looking after the most important thing, the customer. So in a simplistic way, we've got 3 sets of tools. We have the single customer view, we've got the real-time agent toolkit, and we've got the agent engagement solutions, all of which really, in my opinion, are important from a agent servicing customer perspective. So what I wanted to do is ask Lisa and Daniel, what sort of tools have they been providing to their agents to help the customers and help them become super? Lisa, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. Look, I think from our perspective, and I'll again refer to obviously when COVID hit, we had, prior to that, probably about 6 months before, implemented the knowledge management tool. And all I can say is thank goodness that we did it when we did, because by giving our frontline people a tool that has all the information that they need in it to service a client, because they have to be across so many different demand types, and that's not answering sort of general questions, that's processing that piece of work end to end. The tool that we had was quite clunky for them to use and access that information. And so the knowledge management tool was for us an absolute lifesaver in order to get everyone working from home as quickly as we did. And so because it's a Google search for our knowledge, like it is, right? So, that's been probably one of the bigger pieces for us of late. I think I've mentioned we do a lot around trying to get that single view of the client with the build of and the ongoing improvements of our inbuilt CRM, and that links into our platforms in order for the team to really we're slowly getting to a point where they should only be able to use really that one key CRM system. Not there yet, a bit of work to do. But yeah, and then obviously the knowledge management tool has been critical for us.
Daniel. Thank you, Lisa.
Look, if I was to mark my own homework, I wouldn't give myself a pass for what we've done for our agents so far. That is our big area for improvement and opportunity to treat them like our customers and get better there. So the first cab off the ranks, we're not as mature in our journey as Lisa, but we are building an internal knowledge-based solution, which is ready and has been ready for the last 2.5 weeks, but we've been in technology brownout thanks to the Auckland lockdown. So waiting with bated breath to release that. We're going to go from something like 18,900 articles on the website and in our internal knowledge base to sub 3,000. And that'll be a huge moment for us to empower our people. And then building on that, how do we provide our agents with elegant online journeys, which we have put in front of our customers over the last few years and built for our customers? How do we just get our agents to leverage those rather than having, a plethora of screens and click-throughs in CRM that we have tended to build for them over the last few years? So that's our challenge and our opportunity.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm hyper aware of the time and my reputation for managing presentations which finish on time. We're not going to launch into significant discussion of that, but I think the critical point is from what we've been talking about is, one, first contact resolution is not dead. But I think there's a pretty strong evidence to suggest that it is no longer the metric it once was. And if you're being measured on that, you need to be questioning if that's the most relevant thing for you and if that aligns with your corporate strategic goals. And the other part you need to be thinking about is, what tools are you providing your agents? Are you making it easy for them to understand their customer and their journey? Are you making it easy for them to get things done? And is it easy for them to be an employee in your organization? How are you helping them through those processes? So with that, I was going to hand over to Fiona. And thank you again, Daniel and Lisa, so far for your help and attendance today.
All good, Jacob. Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Thanks, Jacob, Daniel, and Lisa. So let's launch into some questions, if that's okay. So we have a question from Jacqueline, specifically for you, Daniel, and it says, Jacqueline asks, is the ownership measured via the survey or are there other measures?
No, it's via the survey. We want to know how the customer felt, because that's who matters at the end of the day. And it is open to interpretation from their perspective, but, the question is quite simply, based on your interaction with Spark, do you feel we owned the issue through to conclusion, or your inquiry through to conclusion?
Thank you. Here's the controversial question from Andrew. Andrew would like to know whether customers have told you that FCR is not important to them. Lisa, maybe you could answer that one.
Love a controversial question. My response to that is no, they have not told us that it's gone. But through our engagement with them, we know, and particularly in our industry, there's more for a lot of the demand types that we do. There is more engagement and hand-holding that is required to support them in order to deliver what matters to them. So, but yeah, good question. Look, the way we operate, or the way we always try to operate, and any decisions that we make, we want to make from a customer perspective. If we had customers, barreling down the doors and saying it's done, then, it'd be a different story. So, yeah.
Daniel, your position?
Similar to Lisa, actually. No, we haven't asked customers that question, but we have applied a lens of reality to it and gone, well, Yes, customers will always say, if you ask them the question, do you want it done in one? They'll say yes. However, when you step down a level of complexity and go, say, if you're getting NBN installed and moving away from copper in Australia, it is not going to be a done in one. So therefore, what is the experience we want for our customers, and did we take ownership against that experience?
Thank you. Jacob, are you hearing more broadly that FCR is not important, or what are you hearing from your customer base?
I hear about it sometimes, and even when it's there are, I wouldn't call them contradictory stats or metrics, but the focus is clearly around digital transformation and customer experience. And then you have first contact resolution or even AHD sitting there sort of raging against the dying of the light. And so you find yourself in some interesting conversations with regard, well, you've got contradictory stats here, and how do you, or contradictory foci here, how do you want to resolve that? And that, you need to put the question back on organizations to say, well, wait a second, what is truly important to us? Because I can only do, you can only really do three things at once.
Absolutely. Scott would like to know whether any of you feel there is a direct correlation between first contact resolution and ownership, especially from Daniel's perspective, he's asked.
There will be a correlation between first contact resolution and ownership. So a customer, say, with a billing inquiry, there's no good reason why they should not be sorted within the first contact itself with a satisfactory explanation. But going back to the I've got NBN being provisioned and my driveway being dug up, the experience and the expectation is different.
Lisa?
Yeah, look, similar. I don't know if I've got any more to add to that, to be honest. It's, well, we base ours around, what the clients want from us. And if we can solve it first call, then great. That's excellent. First interaction, however you want to put it. But sometimes they want, and particularly in COVID times, sometimes they want a bit more engagement and a bit more from us, depending on the demands. So.
Of course. And Jacob, are you aware of any studies that have been done that draw a correlation between FCR and ownership?
No. My research on this is, I find a lot of old-fashioned sales material around first contact resolution. Buy our product because we'll drive down your first call resolution. And I'm not finding the same. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but there's nowhere near as much as the importance in taking ownership. But that's what I think it's important to be discussing that today, because I think ownership is where it's all at. It's that actual it's the customer experience, and it's about aligning what we do in an industry to what our organisations want us to deliver.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll just have one more question, which could be considered to be controversial or not, is how you define first contact resolution. Who'd like to go first? Silence.
Daniel, do you want to have a crack, or shall I have
I spent so long struggling with first contact resolution that, take it away, Jacob.
Listen, it's one of the reasons I came up with this idea was that if I could have the hours back in my life, which I've spent discussing and trying to determine the best metric for first contact resolution, I'd have a lot more hair. It's just so hard to get an accurate definition of it, that I think that's one of its fundamental flaws as a statistic, because you end up with all these provisos around the number of times how many times did a customer contact us in period X after a contact, and then was that other interaction relevant to this? It's a very messy stat. It's nowhere near as clean, and that's why people like it's why people like Lisa and Daniel, I would argue, have moved away from it. A, is it really targeted on what we're looking at? And B, it's a tricky one anyhow. I'm hyper aware of we're 1 minute out. Is it okay if I let Fiona just click through a bit of housekeeping?
Of course.
Just like to promote the next webinar we're doing through the August, the aegis of Auscontact. So we've got another webinar coming up at 9 o'clock on the 1st of October, talking about the critical role of data analytics. I do strongly suggest that people have go seek out the the podcast Lisa recently did for us about life as a contact centre leader during the time of lockdown and COVID. That's available. You'll be able to find that on LinkedIn and on the Verint webpage. And I would also like to call out that we have created an online discussion board. So as a part of our sponsorship of Auscontact, we've provided our online community, and we will be online at that forum discussing any other topics from this discussion today in the Auscontact community for the next hours/days. So if you feel like you'd like to continue or get stuck into an interesting debate around some of the issues we've raised today, I'd love to see you there.
Well, with that, we're at the hour. Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Daniel and Lisa, for your insights today and sharing your stories. And thank you to Verint as our National Platinum sponsor, and to all of you that attended today. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you on the community having a deeper discussion about FCR. Is it really dead? Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you may be. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you all.